Today, I'm going to open up the sequencer and do a technical breakdown of a piece of music I wrote called Safe House. It's a really sort of minimal and simple piece of music, but what I really love about it is that a lot of the effects and the mixing techniques are kind of part of the composition. So it's not just about the notes that are making the emotional effect of the music, it's the distortion, the compressor, the EQ, all those things. And so I thought that it'd be cool to kind of bring you guys in and show you how the different effects can transform organic source material like a vocal or a cello or anything like that and turn it into something that has a little bit more of a unique tone and really sort of makes the piece what it is. So the first element of this track is the synthesizer, and it has a filter that sort of opens up and reaches a peak and then begins to close again. And that's sort of the vibe of the whole track, is that it's like a stream of consciousness that's rising and reaches a certain level and then starts to die back down. If we listen to the synthesizer and the way that it evolves, it starts off very, very bassy, kind of muddy, and that's obviously on purpose, and then it brightens up as the whole track evolves, and this is something that's happening throughout the entirety of the track. And I'm using two filters on it. I'm using the Fab filter, which you can see here. I have written automation and it's opening up, and then I'm using the filter that is connected to the synth itself in the modulation CC1 wheel. It just keeps getting more powerful. It's kind of like more light is kind of being let in and more color, and that's what makes the track have this sort of like sweeping emotional effect as you get into it. It's meant to be, from a listener standpoint, like a slow burn where it slowly evolves, but you reach a certain peak where it all kind of comes together and has a sort of emotional payoff. Another thing that's happening in the synthesizer, which is why it's such an important part of the track, it's just 4 chords that repeat, but every time it repeats, it's in C major. So every time we come back to the root, we're playing it in a different way. We're playing it a different inversion. So it actually starts on the first inversion where the E is the lowest note in the chord. That chord, the second time, it's a second inversion and the G is the lowest note in the chord. Then the third time that we hit it, the C is going to be the lowest note in the chord. And so the idea is, if you actually look at what the synthesizer is doing, it's moving upwards all at the same time that the filters are opening up. So the tonality is getting higher and the colors are opening up from the filter, and all the frequencies are just moving in this one direction and stuff. So the way I kind of wrote it is, if you can visualize, it's kind of like light opening up and more light keeps coming in. If we go to the very peak here, right there, that's the peak. But again, it's just repeating itself constantly, the chords, but it sounds different as the piece evolves because of those inversions. So if we look at other elements other than the synthesizer, vocals are a really huge part of this track, and there's a combination of live vocals and processed vocals from virtual instruments. This is a patch from 8Dio, something called Jennifer Legato, and it's from a library I believe just called Jennifer. And I've got a couple different things on here to make it sort of more interesting than just a plain vocal legato patch, because the whole vibe of this piece of music is very processed and it's got a lot of different experiments with sound. So if we solo this and check out what's on here, you'll see I've got a lot of reverbs. I've got Black Hole from Eventide, Valhalla Room, and then I am squashing that reverb tone through an 1176. I purposefully put those reverbs in the chain prior to putting the compressor, because I wanted the compressor to squash the sound and allow for more of the reverb to kind of come out. I use the compressor kind of like shaping of the sound. So then we've got a decapitator from Sound Toys, which is just wonderful. Then we have Portal from Output, which has a preset called Vox Motion. We have another compressor LA2A, and the reason is the same reason I had the 1176 on there, is that there's now new sounds happening after the compressor's on, and I want to squash those to kind of shape and create the effect that I'm looking to have. This is in no way going to sound like a normal singer, and it's because of this effects chain. And so here is the fab filter then, which is just like the synthesizer. I think almost every track has a filter like that on it, and they're all opening up together to create that sort of thing happening where it's as if a door is opening and light is being let in. This is one instrument. This is just one vocal, and I've got a lot more on it, and these are all the effects on one track. I'm going to show you what the track sounds like. It in no way sounds like someone's actually singing that, but there's a human element because it's taken and deriving from a human voice, and that was the idea. So this is the main theme of the song. That just keeps repeating, and the idea is that it just keeps opening up, and then we keep layering on that main theme, and it's what creates the emotional payoff in sort of the middle or end of the track. So I'm going to break down what some of these individual effects are doing. Black hole and Valhalla reverb. I love the black hole reverb because it has a very atmospheric tone to it. If you check out, I'm going to mute all these other things, but I'm going to put the reverbs on. Sounds much more human without all those other elements. Like that actually sounds like a person. So now I'm going to put the compressor on. And so not only is the track louder, but most importantly, it's sort of wrapping the reverb around the vocal. So it's sort of allowing for when the vocal does that little movement, it's like pushing it, and the reverb almost sounds like it's delayed, but that's on purpose. It's what's adding to the atmosphere and creating that moment. So then we add the decapitator. That's helping really sort of take us away from it sounding like a human voice and start to be a little more interesting. Now it can sort of be like you don't really know what it is. And now Portal really kind of takes it to the next level where there's delay, there's a gate, and it's kind of moving around the space of the speakers. It's going a little bit left to right, and it's creating a much, much deeper effect. So because of the compressor, now the distortion that's coming through the voice is sort of more prominent, and you're just sort of hearing that more human element just poking through every now and again, and that's what's really important in making the track really cool. And I'm going to take you now into another vocal track that I'm layering on top of that from Output's Exhale library. If we listen to this one here, so very different vibe from the Gen vocal. Still has that human sense to it, but it's more heavily processed, and the biggest thing about it is it's a lot airier. And so what I end up doing in this track is I'm sort of riding the levels of the gain from the compressor so that that airiness sort of pops through at certain moments and then ducks back down. Because if you just have a sound that is playing and it's kind of playing through the entirety of a track, or even for a good 15-20 seconds, it can really cause, at least to me, sort of fatigue to the listener, but more importantly, it's just less interesting. I like when the sounds sort of kind of ebb and flow in and out of each other so that it's much more dynamic and creates a much fuller piece at the end of the day. So let's move on from Exhale. This is stuff that I just love, at least in my personal music. I love adding little effects and strange sounds. In this case, I'm using radio static. I'm sort of weaving in and out of the static. It's not constant. It just comes in and goes out, and it's coming in a little bit in the left ear, a little bit in the right ear, and it's just kind of adding these little sounds that keep things evolving and interesting. Those are radio frequencies as you're tuning like an old school radio. And like other elements in this, everything's kind of traveling from left to right. We're making full use of the stereo spectrum there. The whole point of this is to create an atmosphere, to create a mood. These sort of sounds, although they're not traditionally musical, I think add the same sort of element that music adds, where it helps to create an emotion and an experience. So I'm gonna solo out this cello here. So there's just the, the main theme of the song. Something I don't know if other people do this as much, but I know that I like to do it, is when I have solo strings, I really like to add just a tad of distortion on them. So I use Decapitator for that from Sound Toys. To me, it just adds a little bit of more body and breath and just a little bit more life. I still wanted this to sound natural. I just wanted it to be a little fatter. So all right, so next we're gonna look at the viola and violins. You'll see that I'm running through a couple different extra plugins. One of them is Ocean Way Studios. I absolutely friggin' love this plugin for solo instruments. I have used it oftentimes if I'm trying to recreate the sound of a live string section, but the project doesn't have the resources for that. We'll record like a handful of solo performances, and then I run those through this Ocean Way Studio plugin. Basically, it blends really nicely with samples to make things sound live, and it adds more body, it adds more depth to the strings. So other than that, I'm adding some more high-end boost, this Capital chamber reverb, and then another Valhalla room reverb. So for this particular track, to achieve that sort of very atmospheric, really beautiful like mood and experience, there's a lot of reverb. The final live performance that's on the track is the vocals by Julie Elvin, and she did a really, really wonderful job. I gave her the main theme, and I wanted her to go over that, but add sort of her own interpretation and colors to everything, and it just came out really, really great. So let's listen to her vocals. So these are just like sort of little textures and phrases that she's doing to kind of color and bring us into the main theme here. Those just work so well to like set the tone and create that atmosphere of like endless sound reverberating. And I think that she just did a wonderful job. So I'm going to break down now the plugin chain on her voice, because there's obviously a lot. I'm using Soundboy's Echo Toy as a delay. Just like the other vocals, we have compressed this with an LA2A so that it's taking all of that atmosphere that her voice is producing and sort of wrapping it around her voice, just like the other virtual instrument vocals. If you just listen to it, I'll take all this stuff off. And I'll solo her. So here's now the vocals again with the effects. It just really brings together all of that atmosphere and emotion that we're looking to get. Then at the end here, when the piece sort of breaks through with the strings and reaches its peak, we have these extra layers. And I even mixed up those breaths that she takes. I mixed them up higher so we get more of that inhale, because it just works with the atmosphere. It sounds really gorgeous. So that's basically it. Those are all the major elements of that track. I discovered a lot of different techniques and a lot of different sounds, which I've now ended up using on a ton of different film and television series. If you want to hear the whole track so that you can hear how all those elements are blended together, then check out the music video or the track video. And I really hope that this was helpful to somebody and that you enjoyed watching it.